Well, this time yesterday on Outside Source, we were talking about Israel's Prime Minister and how he had just made a big play of having what he was calling new evidence regarding an Iranian nuclear weapons program. Well, today the world's nuclear watchdog said it was already aware of the weapons program being highlighted and said, in fact, that program was the reason the Iran deal was struck in the first place. So this was yesterday. We saw Benjamin Netanyahu standing in front of a big lot of files and also going through a PowerPoint. He showed us documents as well. He said these documents came from a secret archive in Tehran. And he said that this was proof the Iranians had lied about their nuclear plans. In fact, he made absolutely certain we got that message by standing in front of this slide for a while. But today the nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, is saying Iran's nuclear activities didn't go beyond 2009. And that means it hasn't violated the terms of the nuclear deal that was signed in 2015. Other signatories, for the moment, agree. Britain says it continues to back the deal. France says this new intelligence merely proves the need to ensure this nuclear deal remains. And we've also heard from one of the key architects of the 2015 deal. This is the EU's foreign policy chief, Federica Mogherini.
I have not seen from Prime Minister Netanyahu arguments for the moment on non-compliance, meaning violation from the Iran of its nuclear commitments under the nuclear deal. And again, the nuclear deal was put in place exactly because there was no trust among the parties. Otherwise, we wouldn't have required a nuclear deal to be put in place.
Well, the Iranians have dismissed Mr. Netanyahu's presentation as propaganda, but really it was never aimed at convincing them. This was a presentation for Israelis and for an American audience, in particular, the president. Remember, the US is a signatory of this Iran deal, but Mr. Trump has to decide by May the 12th whether America will continue to ratify it. Well, today we heard from the US Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, on this matter.
This will, I think, spell out the scope and scale of the program that they undertook there, and I think makes it very clear that at the very least the Iranians have continued to lie to their own people.
An important thing to note here is that Mr. Netanyahu was offering evidence of Iran's nuclear program from several years ago. But the past tense wasn't initially noted by the White House. It released a statement on Monday night in which it said, "These facts are consistent with what the US has long known. Iran has a robust nuclear weapons program that it's tried and failed to hide from the world and from its people." But then later on, the very same statement appeared, but the word has was replaced with the word had. And so there was an acknowledgement that these claims were in fact about times now past. Well, the BBC's Lise Doucette is our chief international correspondent. I spoke to Lise a little earlier.
Well, yesterday we got these tweets coming out of Israel saying that they had uncovered this trove of documents. In fact, Prime Minister Netanyahu described it as one of the greatest achievements in intelligence gathering of the Israeli state, which is saying a lot. 55,000 printed pages, hundreds of compact discs that the Mossad, the Secret Service, took in this daring operation in a warehouse in Tehran. Now, they seem to have got a lot more information. But the substance of it, as you were saying, the IAEA said we knew about those claims, we've dealt with them. American intelligence confirmed in 2007 that Iran had stopped this program after the invasion of Iraq in 2003. And we heard from the IAEA today again that they had no credible information that after 2012 that anything had been done by the Iranians in this direction. So it is in the past tense. And many are now saying today that the presentation, this uber PowerPoint by Prime Minister Netanyahu, actually justifies the need for the Iran deal, doesn't junk it.
Now, I'm very glad you're here because I want to ask you to assess what impact the Americans on their own can have on this deal, because I've asked a few different analysts. Some say if the Americans pull out, if they fail to ratify, the whole thing's in jeopardy. Other people say, actually, this is built on more solid foundations.
It is meant to be built on solid foundations. It was hailed in 2015 as an historic multilateral deal, one of the most important in decades. But the reality is, and senior Iranian officials have said this to me, that America pulling out would be a wrecker. That the Americans are the ones that have such overwhelming sway on the financial system. Even without the United States pulling out, Businessmen in Europe are very wary of running afoul of U.S. sanctions, being accused of criminal activity because they violate sanctions that the U.S. still has in place. So it is having an effect on what Iran was expecting was the economic benefits of the deal. So if America pulls out, for many, in reality and in terms of the situation on the ground, the deal would be dead.
I know you've come up to speak to us in the middle of finishing a documentary you're making about Syria at the moment. And I guess we have to factor Syria into all our discussions around the Iran deal, because increasingly the military tension between Iran and Israel within Syria is becoming more and more visible.
The Iran deal is the curtain. Behind it is Israel's main worry and Saudi Arabia's main worry, and what President Trump is saying is his main worry in the region, although we know that a lot of this has to do with his own domestic constituencies and trying to undo Barack Obama's legacy. We are seeing the tensions rising month by month in Syria. A proxy war is already unfolding. On Sunday, there were airstrikes against a military base in Syria, one of Syria's biggest military bases, known to be used by Iran and Hezbollah to store munitions. Israel didn't say that it carried it out, but it has carried out with increasing frequency airstrikes against Syria, and they are all about its worries, legitimate worries, that Iran is strengthening its military position right on Israel's border. When I was at the Munich Security Forum this year in February, the premier security conference, it was said matter-of-factly, it's not a question of if there will be a clash over Syria, it's just a question of when.
The name of the documentary is?
Syria, the World's War. There it gives you an indication.
Thank you, Lise.
New tonight. What's going on in Iran? The top defense experts and lawmakers, some of them downplaying the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's dramatic presentation, the one where he claimed that there are new documents, hundreds of thousands, that are obtained by Israeli intelligence, which prove Iran is lying about its nuclear program and that has no plans to honor its end of the nuclear deal. Here is Netanyahu and then the reaction.
Tonight, we are going to reveal new and conclusive proof of the secret nuclear weapons program that Iran has been hiding for years from the international community. 100,000 files right here prove that they lied.
I think this is fundamentally old news.
I think there's actually less here than meets the eye.
It's nothing new. This is really not groundbreaking. We've known of this for some time.
Out front now, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, Ron Dermer. And Ambassador Dermer, you heard that. Old news, less than meets the eye, nothing new from a former NATO commander, CIA director, and, of course, Senator Corker. Why are you calling this a, quote, smoking bomb?
Well, first of all, the information is new. They don't have it. I respect all of those people, but they haven't seen the information. The only agency that has seen the information is the U.S. intelligence agency, the CIA. As of last week, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was the director of the CIA, and he said himself that this is new information. It was new to us. I don't know if Senator Corker or the other people who you showed on screen, if they had this information. It was certainly new to Israeli intelligence. It's a massive amount of information. We knew that Iran had a military nuclear program, but we did not know the extent of it. And there are many things that the Prime Minister didn't show. Basically, he's showing 30 PowerPoint slides. We have 100,000 documents. We have videos. A file the likes of which we've never seen. And when it comes into the hands of the other intelligence agencies, like the United Kingdom and France and Germany and the IAEA, they will say that the information is new. I have no doubt about that. So I think people should reserve judgment, let the experts look at the information. It takes many weeks to go through it, because you got to know Farsi, because it's their documents.
Farsi, yeah.
And the other thing is you need to have the technical expertise. The Prime Minister actually showed some new things for people who are really in the weeds on this stuff, but it's new and very damning information that actually shows that Iran falsified all of their presentations to the International Atomic Energy Agency. And you heard the White House say today that the whole deal was based on this lie, and that's because when the IAEA had to sign off on this in December 2015, Iran basically falsified all those documents. I should point out one other thing regarding a violation, and that is Iran moved this trove of information to this site recently, after the deal was signed. The action of moving this and actually making a positive action to hide their program is actually a violation of the JCPOA.
So I want to talk to you about that location. But first, you know, the prime minister comes on and shows his 30-slide summary, right? The reality of it is, of course, Ambassador Dermer, we all know he has issued dire warnings before over decades with timeframes about the Iranian nuclear program. And the Iranian foreign minister, Zarif, took to Twitter, as you saw, saying Netanyahu is, quote, the boy who can't stop crying wolf on the back of this presentation last night. And here's why.
The most dangerous of these regimes is Iran. Only the United States can lead this vital international effort to stop the nuclearization of terrorist states. But the deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. When I last stood here, I spoke of the consequences of Iran developing nuclear weapons. Now time is running out. They're very close. They're 6 months away from being about 90% of having the enriched uranium for an atom bomb.
That went back as early as 1996, 22 years ago. In 2012, 6 months away. And here we are. You're not saying they have one yet?
All I can tell you is thank God that the prime minister has been prime minister for 12 of those 20 years. Because had we done nothing, had your intelligence agencies done nothing over the last 20 years, they would have had a nuclear arsenal a long time ago. And you can invite all the previous heads of the intelligence services, Israeli intelligence, U.S. intelligence services, and other intelligence services around the world that did a lot to block Iran's path to the bomb. The problem with this deal, Aaron, the fatal flaw, and you didn't show that from the Prime Minister's speech to Congress in 2015, is this deal's restrictions that it puts in place, they're all temporary. And they're all automatically removed in a few years. And a lot of people responded to what the Prime Minister said, and they actually argued, you know, this just vindicates the need to have restrictions. And frankly, that's an absurd argument. If the restrictions that were in place were permanent restrictions, I could understand them.
So
let me just finish this point.
They would have made a permanent deal. I mean, they're saying this is the best deal they could get. So it was either no restrictions and no visibility, or some restrictions and some visibility and a delay. And that was your choice. It's not a permanent solution.
No, or ratchet up pressure on Iran and actually force them to accept a deal that is in U.S. national interest, Israel's national interest, and the interests of the parties in the region. I mean, at the time, you remember, Aaron, people said, if we don't do this deal, there's going to be war. Now look at what's happening in the Middle East. As all the sanctions were removed, as all the money has flowed into Iran, now you see Iran marching through the Middle East, and the aggression of Iran has only increased because of this deal. And it's a very dangerous situation that we have in Syria, that we have around us, and it's because of the sanctions relief that came for this deal. The important thing, the fatal flaw of the deal is that the restrictions are temporary. And what Netanyahu showed yesterday is when those restrictions are removed, Iran won't need to sneak in or break into a bomb. They can just walk in, go to those vaults, get the information they have, build a nuclear arsenal, and that's very dangerous.
I want to ask you about that, but I want to make one point on this, right? I was in Iran before, as the deal was being negotiated, before it was being negotiated. There were Germans there, there were South Koreans there. There were a lot of people doing things that were not in the spirit of sanctions, whether they were outright in violation or not, right? And the understanding was the U.S. and Israel had lost the rest of the world, right? You weren't going to get that sanctions pressure. It was going to go away anyway. So get a deal while you have some of it. You didn't have the option of full-on sanctions. Do you think you have that now?
Well, first of all, we definitely had the option. There were crippling sanctions on Iran only for 18 months. The previous administration pulled the rug out from under the sanctions regime and agreed to a bad deal. They should have ratcheted up the pressures and forced Iran to fully dismantle its program, which was the position of the international community until 2013. We can restore the crippling sanctions very fast, and Iran is a very vulnerable regime. You saw the protests in Iran only a few months ago, where the people of Iran are fed up with the regime, they're fed up with the adventurism in the region, and it was a big mistake to make this deal, and we hope that that President Trump will make the right choice moving forward, the right choice for America, for Israel, and for the peace of the world.
I want to give you a chance to respond to John Kerry, of course, the American who was arguably, or inarguably, I would say, the chief negotiator on the U.S. side for this deal. He tweeted today, it's worth remembering that the early 2000s, when his evidence comes from, referring to Prime Minister Netanyahu's, was the period where the world had no visibility into Iran's program. More and more centrifuges were spinning each month. The world was not united like it is now. There was no negotiating. All of that changed with the JCPOA, which is the Iran deal. Blow up the deal, and you're back there tomorrow. Back there tomorrow? That's an acceleration in getting a bomb.
Look, this deal puts us on cruise control heading over a cliff. And the people who say the deal is working are basically saying the cruise control is working. And no one is thinking about the cliff when all these restrictions are removed. The inspection regime in Iran, Aaron, is a joke. It's not inspectors that found these documents in Tehran. It's Israel's intelligence that was able to obtain them. All the inspectors do is they look under the keys, under the light of the lamppost. But all the dark places in Iran, they don't see. And all the inspectors are doing are going into places where Iran is allowing them to go. That's not where they're going to have their secret facilities.
And Ambassador, quickly before we go, you had agents, Mossad agents, who were in that warehouse in Tehran?
I'm not going to comment at all on the operation. I think it's a great coup for Israeli intelligence, but it also tells you how much we failed in the past to have this information. Why didn't we have this 3 years ago? And I would not assume, Aaron, that what we have is everything that Iran has.
All right. Ambassador Dermer, thank you.
Thank you.
And next, as Trump